My name is Rachel. I'm 39. I live in Madison, Wisconsin. I've been married to Ben for almost 13 years. We have a house on a quiet street near Lake Mendota, white fence, 2 bikes in the garage, a golden retriever named Molly. From the outside, we're the couple people trust with their spare keys. Ben teaches economics at the university. I run a small graphic design studio from home. It's quiet, predictable. We host Thanksgiving. We rake leaves together. We have wine and Scrabble nights on Fridays that always end by 10. But here's the truth. I hadn't looked Ben in the eyes in months. I mean, really looked. Not across a dinner table, not in passing with a, "Did you take the trash out?" I mean, seen him. Because somewhere along the way we stopped being husband and wife, and started being co-managers of a well-maintained life. I felt it first during the blizzard in February. We were stuck inside for 2 days. Power flickered. I made chili. He watched ESPN reruns. And we didn't speak more than 15 words the entire weekend. No fight.
No tensión.
Just nothing. That kind of silence is louder than shouting. And then, in April, something happened. Something small. You might even laugh at it. But it changed everything. I got a message. A simple forward message. From someone I hadn't heard from in over 15 years. Still in Chicago, Rach? It was from Eli Walker. The guy I dated the summer before I met Ben. And you know how sometimes your whole body remembers a person before your mind catches up? That's what it felt like. Like a match lit in a dark room I didn't know I was sitting in. You want the truth? Ben and I had stopped sleeping together 6 months earlier. Not officially. Not with any conversation. It just stopped. First it was work stress. Then late nights. Then a pulled back. Then a quiet avoidance. Then it just wasn't happening. We didn't fight. We didn't fix it. We just let it die like a plant neither of us wanted to water. So when Eli messaged me, with those 4 stupid words, something opened, cracked, shifted. Want me to tell you who Eli was? Because that's where this really begins. And once I start, we're not going back. Eli Walker. God, even his name felt like a memory. We met in 2005, the summer I interned at a gallery in downtown Chicago. I was 20, a junior at Northwestern. He was 27, tall, scruffy, ran a small vinyl record store in Logan Square. The kind of guy who smelled like cedar and black coffee, who could name every obscure indie band before they got cool, and made it sound like poetry. He used to ride an old Honda motorcycle, no helmet, long hair tied back. Total cliché. But the kind of cliché that ruins you because you're young enough to think heartbreak is romantic. We dated for 4 months. That summer was fire. Like slow burn, skin on fire kind of love. And then it just fell apart. I got scared. He wanted to travel. I got offered a job back in Madison. We said goodbye in the rain literally, and never spoke again. Until that message. Still in Chicago, Rach? I stared at the screen for 10 minutes. Then 20. Ben was in the backyard mowing the lawn. Molly was asleep at my feet. The house smelled like lemon candles and dryer sheets. And I felt nothing but static. I typed 1 word. Yeah. I hit send. He replied immediately. I walked past the gallery on Ashland the other day. Thought of you. Wondered if you still sketch in the margins of every napkin. God. He remembered. He remembered something Ben didn't even know. We messaged for hours. Started with memories. Then music. Then life updates. Then slowly, so slowly I didn't even notice it turned into us. Again. That week I stayed up late 3 nights in a row just to talk to him. I'd sit in the kitchen after Ben went to sleep, phone in hand, smiling like I was 20 again. I didn't even try to hide it. Because in some dark corner of myself I wanted it. A week later he wrote, "I'll be in Madison next weekend. Want to grab coffee?" My heart punched the inside of my ribs. I stared at that message like it was a test. Like if I answered wrong, something in me would shift forever. And the worst part? I already knew what I'd say. Saturday, 11 a.m. Johnson Street Cafe. Do you want to hear what happened that day? Because it wasn't dramatic. There was no kiss. No hotel room. No flash of lightning. But it was the beginning of the end. And in some ways the beginning of me. Saturday, 11 a.m. Johnson Street Cafe. I got there early. Wore jeans and a pale blue sweater. Something casual, harmless. I told Ben I was meeting an old friend from college, a lie so thin it felt like glass. It was raining just enough to make the windows fog and the streets smell like pavement and wet leaves. I sat by the window, ordered a black coffee I barely touched. And then Eli walked in. He hadn't changed much. Still had that worn leather jacket, still walked like someone who didn't apologize for taking up space. His hair was shorter, a little gray at the temples. But his eyes, that mix of mischief and melancholy, were exactly the same. He spotted me, smiled. And for a second I forgot everything. My name. My life. My ring. He sat across from me and we didn't speak. Not for a few seconds. Just looked. And then finally, "You look good, Ratch." I laughed. Nervously. "You look." I paused. "Exactly how I remember you." The conversation was dangerous. Not because of what we said, but because of how it felt. Effortless.
No gaps. No polites silences.
No calendar syncing or, "Don't forget the trash bins go out on Thursdays." We talked about books, music, how I stopped drawing years ago, how he started writing again, about the quiet, terrifying beauty of being almost 40 and realizing you've built a life that feels nothing like your own. He didn't ask about Ben. Not really. Just said, in that quiet way of his, "You always settle when you're afraid. You did it when you left Chicago." I could have slapped him. Instead, I looked down at my coffee, untouched, and whispered, "Maybe I'm tired of being afraid." We hugged when we left. That's all. But his hand lingered at my waist a second too long. And I didn't step away. That night Ben asked how coffee was. I told him it was nice. Then I kissed him goodnight with guilt thick on my tongue. He didn't notice. He never notices anymore. The second time I saw Eli, I didn't tell Ben. We met at Olbrich Gardens. Walked the paths like two old friends. He brought a sketch pad. Said, "Draw something for me." I laughed it off. Then he said, "You used to believe your hands could make magic." So I did. I sat on a bench in the middle of the rose garden and I drew him. And when I looked up, he was already looking at me like I was the only thing in the world worth staring at. I didn't kiss him that day. But I wanted to. So badly it hurt. I went home that evening, took off my coat, and stood in the laundry room with my heart beating so loud I thought it would wake the kids. I wanted Ben to come in and ask me what was wrong. To see me. To say anything. He didn't. He was upstairs watching the Brewers game. You know what I think cheating really is? It's not the moment your lips touch someone else's. It's the moment you realize you don't care if they do. I can keep going. But from here on out, things begin to spiral. The lies. The hotel. The moment I couldn't go back. Want to hear what happened the night I crossed the line? All right. But I need you to understand something first. When people talk about affairs, they make it sound like a switch flips. Like one day you're faithful and the next day you're not. But that's not how it was for me. It felt more like erosion. Tiny pieces of me washing away day after day until the woman who promised to be loyal, who meant it, was just gone. And in her place was someone I didn't recognize, but who felt more alive than I had in years. It happened on a Tuesday. Ben was at a faculty retreat in Milwaukee. The kids were with my sister for the night. She offered to keep them so I could have a break. Funny how people give you what you need without knowing the reason why. Eli texted me around 5 p.m. Dinner. One word. No pressure. But everything in me snapped tight like a violin string. I didn't respond right away. I went upstairs, opened the closet, stared at myself in the mirror, and I asked the question no married woman ever wants to ask. What do I wear for someone who isn't my husband? I chose a black dress I hadn't worn in years. Simple. Soft. A little too fitted. I didn't wear my wedding ring. We met at a quiet restaurant on the edge of town, one of those farm-to-table places with dim lighting and expensive wine by the glass. I walked in and saw him already seated at the bar. He stood when he saw me, didn't say a word, just looked, and something in his eyes told me. He knew. He knew exactly how this night would end. Dinner was slow, intimate. We talked, we laughed, we touched fingertips when we reached for the same fork. But it was after, in the parking lot, that the air changed. We stood next to my car. The lot was nearly empty. It was cold, but not enough to make me rush. He stepped closer. So close I could feel the heat of his breath. "Say it," he whispered. I looked up at him. "Say what?" "That you're not going home yet." And I didn't. The hotel was only a mile away. We drove separately. I remember gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. I remember the silence in the elevator, the hum of the carpeted hallway, the soft click of the lock when the door opened. I stood in the doorway for a second, long enough to make it real. Then I stepped inside. I'm not going to describe what happened in detail. You already know. You've seen the movie. You've read the novel. But I'll tell you this. It wasn't about sex. It was about being seen. Completely. Hungrily. Without apology. And for the first time in years I didn't feel like someone's wife. I felt like Rachel again. When I came home the next morning, Ben was still gone. I showered. Threw the dress in the back of the closet. Started a load of laundry. And when the kids came home that afternoon, I smiled like nothing had happened. Because that's what people like me do. We smile. We cook. We make appointments. We carry secrets like second skin. But that was only the beginning. Because once you cross the line, once you taste that kind of freedom, you can never go back to being someone's ghost. You want to know what happened when Ben found out? Because he did. Eventually, they always do. All right. The beginning had its weight. The taste of freedom had its pull. But the truth always comes crashing down like thunder after the calm. I didn't think Ben would find out. Not at first. But secrets are fragile. They slip. They unravel. It was a Sunday 2 weeks after that night with Eli. The weather was still cold, but there was a thin sliver of sunlight breaking through the clouds, like it was trying to offer a little hope. I was in the kitchen making breakfast, eggs, toast, the usual. The kids were already playing in the living room, and Ben was sitting at the table reading the newspaper. He hadn't said much that morning. Just a quick good morning, and then the low hum of his voice as he muttered through the headlines. But then the hum stopped. He put down the paper. I didn't look up, still whisking eggs. I felt the weight of his gaze before he spoke. "What's this?" He held out a small slip of paper. A receipt. My heart dropped into my stomach. I didn't even have to look at it to know what it was. It was from the hotel. The one Eli and I had stayed at. I stopped breathing. My fingers froze on the eggs. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to reach for the receipt, to tear it up, to say anything, but I couldn't move. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Rachel." His tone was quiet, controlled. Like he was breaking apart but didn't want me to see it. "How long?" I don't know why, but I lied. I said it was a mistake. I said it was just a moment of weakness. That I didn't know how it happened. That I didn't mean it. I don't think he believed me. He didn't say it out loud, but I could see it in the way his eyes hardened. His lips pressed together in that tight line he gets when he's angry. The way his hands clenched into fists. But still he didn't yell. He didn't storm out. He didn't throw things like I thought he might. He just stood there looking at me, waiting for me to tell him the truth. And then I did. Not all of it, but enough to break the dam. "It's not just one time, Ben," I whispered. His face went pale. "I've been seeing Eli again. I've been seeing him for weeks. I thought he would leave. I thought he would walk out, grab his coat, and leave me standing in the kitchen just like that. But he didn't." "You've been seeing him?" His voice was low, almost hollow. I nodded, unable to say anything more. I felt the space between us stretch wider than it ever had before. All the years we'd been married, all the love, all the little moments, they felt like dust in that moment. He stood there, his face unreadable. For the longest time, neither of us spoke. Felt like an eternity. Like I was drowning and he was too tired to pull me out. Finally, he said it. "I've been seeing someone too." The words hit me like a slap. I looked up at him, not believing what I was hearing. He continued, his voice still cold, though there was something underneath it, pain, regret. "You think I didn't notice? You think I didn't know? I've been watching you for months, Rachel." And I stayed silent. I stayed because I thought, maybe if I waited, if I didn't rock the boat, we could somehow fix this. "Who?" I whispered, my voice cracking. "It doesn't matter," he said. "What matters is that we've both been living lies. I'm not innocent in this either. But I'm done pretending." There it was. I had expected confrontation. I had expected anger, yelling, maybe even the destruction of everything we had. But Ben was quiet. He wasn't the man I thought he was anymore. He wasn't the man I fell in love with. And I wasn't the woman I used to be. We didn't talk much after that. Not for days. The kids noticed the change. Mia asked me why we weren't talking. Lev asked why Daddy wasn't playing basketball with him in the driveway like he used to. I didn't have the answers. And I hated that. Ben filed for divorce a month later. No surprises there. I knew it was coming. The moment I confessed, I knew I was already too late. The papers came to me while I was sitting in my studio, sketching some abstract lines that meant nothing. I didn't cry. I didn't fight it. I signed them and sent them back. But Eli, that's the part I'm not sure I can tell you. I never saw him again. Not after everything with Ben. Not after the divorce. But I couldn't stop thinking about him. It's funny. You think the affair, the secret, will be the hardest part. But it's not. The hardest part is facing the emptiness. The moment after everything unravels. When you realize there's no one left to blame. Not even yourself. And that's where I am now. A year later. Ben and I are divorced. The kids are still adjusting. Still ask why we don't live together anymore. I don't know what happened to Eli. I think I blocked his number. But I don't regret it. Not even a little. Because sometimes you have to break everything to finally see what you need. And sometimes, the only way to get back to yourself is to leave everything behind. I'll take you there. To the after. Because that's the part no one talks about, right? Not the fire, not the fall. But the quiet that follows. After the divorce, I stayed in the house. Ben moved into a condo near campus. It made the transition easier for the kids. Or at least that's what we told ourselves. But the truth was simpler. He didn't want the memories. And I didn't want to be the one who walked away from the garden I planted. I repainted the walls. Soft grays. Some blues. Got rid of the coffee table Ben insisted on keeping since grad school. Bought one of those low modern ones with rounded edges. The kind you see in lifestyle magazines. It didn't match the couch, but I didn't care. For the first time in years, I was making choices without a second voice in my head. The kids stayed with me during the week, went to Ben's on weekends. It was quiet. Too quiet at first. Molly, the dog, would sit by the door on Friday nights after they left, waiting for someone to come home. Sometimes I'd sit beside her, and do the same. People assume infidelity ends in loneliness. And maybe it does in a way. But loneliness isn't always bad. Sometimes it's just space, clean, wide space, where you finally hear yourself again. I started drawing again. Really drawing. Not logos. Not layouts. Not deadline work. But messy, raw, charcoal sketches that covered my hands in black dust. Bodies. Eyes. Hands reaching. Things I hadn't drawn since art school. I didn't show anyone. I didn't have to. One night in February, I was sitting in the studio with a glass of wine, a jazz record spinning in the background, when my phone lit up. A number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me tap accept. Silence. And then, "Hey Ratch." I froze. Eli. His voice was lower. Tired. He sounded different. Older. "I heard," he said quietly. "About the divorce." I didn't want to reach out, but I don't know. I couldn't not. I didn't say anything. Just sat there, glass in hand, heart beating in my throat. "I'm sorry," he said after a long pause. "I didn't mean to disappear. I thought maybe I made things worse." I laughed. Bitterly. "You didn't disappear, Eli. I let you go. There's a difference." More silence. Then, "Do you regret it?" I closed my eyes. Thought about the moment I stepped into that hotel room. About the way Ben looked at me across the kitchen table, holding that receipt. About the nights I sat in this very room, hands stained with charcoal, finally remembering who I was. "No," I said. "Not for a second." He exhaled. I could hear him smiling on the other end. "Good," he said. "That makes one of us." Then click. He was gone. I haven't heard from him since. But I think about him sometimes. Not with longing, but with something quieter. Like a song that used to make you cry, and now just makes you nod along. I'm not in love. Not with anyone. And maybe that's okay. Maybe this part of my life, this after, isn't about falling in love again. Maybe it's about learning to want less, want quieter, want stillness, want myself. That's the end of this story, but not the end of me.